So who's visiting the Corso Italia trade area? To understand this, first you need to know two definitions. The first one being index. Index is a way that we organize information on a scale to say that things are lower than average, average, or higher than average. In this case, we see that blue is 80, which means it's 20% lower than average by simply understanding the fact that you can figure out how much something is higher or lower than average by subtracting it by 100. So 110 is 10% higher than average, while 80 is 20% lower than average. So the benchmark is also just as simple in that the benchmark really is just represented by the average across Toronto. And that's the average data points that we've been able to collect by residents in Toronto, while the darker purple is really represented by the trade area data. So it's important to flag that you'll typically see these in charts speaking to demographic information that we have in the community. In terms of visitation, we do have some quick data that we wanted to highlight at the beginning of this presentation on people visiting this community, Corso Italia, over the course of January to December 2022. If you want to take some time to go through this, please do pause. But I want to also flag quickly that we've seen over 11 million visitors during this 1 year period, with 506,000 of those visitors being unique visitors. In terms of the day, the weeks that they visit the most, we see that it increases as it gets to Friday throughout the work week, and it slowly drops off during the weekend. Additionally, in terms of what day of the week that they visit the most, we do notice that the most often times that people are visiting, or the highest amount of times that people end up visiting the community, is during their evening commute, which is, once again, very interesting to consider that people are traveling through this community and visiting this community often before and after work hours, and typically the most during the work week. So when I've mentioned a couple times what trade area is, but when we're speaking to the trade area, this is specifically what I'm talking about. The trade area is that geographic area from which the Corso Italia business community can generate, or has generated, a majority of its customers. The trade area doesn't really represent the boundaries of the BIA, as you could probably compare against the map I showed you of the BIA's boundaries already, but this allows us to really understand the people who live directly around the BIA. And to get even more granular and specific, I wanted to focus on the two postal codes that are actually representative of this trade area, but also the two postal codes that visit this trade area the most, specifically M6E and M6H, which is the postal codes north of St. Clair and directly south of St. Clair. These two postal codes are going to be where we'll spend the next few minutes quickly discussing about the data that we have about them and how maybe we can leverage this data to better inform how businesses can target these community members who live just down the streets from their businesses. For starters, M6H, the M6H postal code has about 28,681 visitors currently to Corso Italia. However, that population is 43,315, which means we're only getting 66.2% of that community of M6H visiting the Corso Italia businesses, while we could get much more if we look at it by trying to target that remaining group of people who have yet to visit, which is 4,634. The same goes for M6E, where 24,527 visitors are actively coming from this postal code, but that really only represents 72.4%. So once again, there's still an opportunity here where there's 9,364 people who have yet to come to the Corso Italia area, whereas they live just down the street. So how do we do this? How do we target those people? The first step is we have to understand who they are. When it comes to individuals living north of St. Clair, we do notice that there's a lot more people who are actually, to be clear, the median age is 52, which is a lot older than the median age of those who live south of St. Clair. The other thing that's interesting to note is that when people who live north of St. Clair, their largest age group is actually that age range of 0 to 19, whereas south of St. Clair has their most significant age ranges in terms of their age population between that 25 and 39 age group. Now, this is interesting for many reasons because it can help to inform some of the business practices or business decisions that you have as a business. Consider which target customer you have for your business is most represented by these age groups. If you're an age group that is looking to target children, younger people, whether it be in the fashion and retail space, if you provide clothing to a small as a small business to that younger demo, then maybe you should target more of your energy toward people living north of the BIA. However, if you're a restaurant or bar or entertainment or nightlife space, or really have clothing and you're a retailer that is more prone to target people between the ages of 25 to 39, then maybe your best bet is to consider people living south of the BIA. Additionally, we have some information on household income, not too far from the average household income in Toronto for both North and South, but it is important to note that there is about a $10,000 difference between those living south of St. Clair versus the people living north of St. Clair. Also, people living south of St. Clair use public transit a little more than those living north of St. Clair, while those who live in the north of St. Clair are driving around a little more. So there is a bit of a balance. The numbers are pretty consistent in terms of transportation, but they do see a bit of an equivalent trade between the amount of times that people are using public transit versus cars. There is a high difference between education on north and south of St. Clair, with people who live south of St. Clair having a much higher degree attainment of specifically for university. But I think the most interesting here is the diversity statistics that we have. For diversity, what we've noticed is that this is data specific to visible minority status and what both groups would really identify as. For north of St. Clair, we've noticed that 42.2% belong to a visible minority group, Black, Filipino, Latin American, which is a lot higher than the numbers that we have for south of St. Clair. But interestingly enough, the diversity stats that we have for those who live south of St. Clair is also different. Just one street, and we start to see a significant change where the highest is north of St. Clair for visible minority status is Black, while as the third highest is Black when you see folks living south of St. Clair. So even the diversity stats can help inform some of the ways in which you understand the people who are likely to frequent your business as well. This is a quick way of just summarizing their shopping preferences by postal code. We don't have to go into it in detail now, but I would recommend that if you want to take some time to go through this, just pause and read through it, especially if one of these are relevant to your specific business and your own interests as well. Next, what we're going to talk about is annual household spend by postal code. So we're going to go through food spend first, because one of the things I wanted to highlight is that despite the fact that both groups are spending within an average range on food, we have noticed that overall, south of St. Clair is spending more money on food, and this really shows up in their total food expenditure, which is $12,000, whereas those living north of St. Clair are spending about $10,972, so just over $1,000 extra per household in this instance, as well as for restaurants is where we also see that significant jump as well. Right, as I mentioned, there's a bit of a $1,000 difference, so we're likely seeing that $1,000 difference on how each postal code is actually spending their money on restaurants. On the north of St. Clair side, they're spending $3,159 per household, which is about 24% lower than the average in Toronto. Whereas restaurants folks living south of St. Clair are spending $4,164 on restaurants, which is 32% higher than the average. So, long story short, we do see where that trade-off is that I mentioned earlier, that $1,000 trade-off. Also, when it comes to food spend, it's about similar. There's a very minimal difference there. North of St. Clair is spending $7,813, while south of St. Clair is spending about $100 more per household on that same item. The interesting thing for me here is to see also that there's marginal but relevant difference between the amount of money people are spending on shelter. North is spending about $19,000 for, and the tricky thing there is that it's 9% lower than average. So that speaks to another fact where we look at those who live south of St. Clair with a little more money, but they're still spending about a similar amount on their shelter and their household as well. So one of the last things I wanted to share in terms of household spend in general is just the amount of money that they're spending on tobacco and alcohol. The important thing to flag here is that we don't have really clear breakdowns for these two postal codes about what they're spending on tobacco and alcohol. It is an amalgamation. The numbers are combined for both groups. So I do want to flag that. But north of St. Clair is spending about $2,560, while $3,294 are being spent south of St. Clair. So south of St. Clair is spending a lot more money on tobacco and alcohol than the group living north of St. Clair. And it's important to consider, especially if you're a bar or restaurant, that the people that you may want to target is likely more relevant to the group living south of St. Clair as opposed to anywhere else. And some quick stats around media and social media habits. We have some data around how people are using TV and social media. TV between north and south is pretty consistent. It's quite similar, if I'm going to be honest. The benchmarks aren't too relevant here because if we just look at minutes spent per day, it's a very small difference, and it isn't going to really inform or change a business strategy, especially in marketing, if there's about a 10-minute difference in terms of how much people are watching TV per day. And social media usage is pretty consistent across the board for YouTube, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Not too much differences there. Sometimes 0.5% to 2% differences for each platform. And same goes for the reasons why people are following brands on social media. All relatively similar. So nothing too different, but if you want to take some time, press pause, go through it yourself. But now that we know these things, what can we do with this information? Well, the first way we can do something with this information is by now understanding their spending habits and their social media usage and where they live and how much money they may have to spend on an annual basis. Now we can start to figure out ways to target them based on the social values that we know of. So we have social values for both groups. And what these social values are ways that we can use and understand individuals living both north and south of St. Clair by understanding the values that they hold dear to their hearts that influence their day-to-day decision-making, including their spending habits. By understanding their social values and their values, we're able to influence our marketing efforts as businesses to better reflect the things that they want to see when they're being spoken to about a product or service. So let's give you some examples of what these social values can look like. For starters, north of St. Clair, they are looking, when it comes to social values, their strongest social values are really tied to this traditional and conservative value set. For example, one of the strongest values that they have is one's family is more important than everything else. So if someone really cares about family and maintaining their household and taking care of their family and supporting their family, it's important for you as a business to consider how this can show up in your marketing campaigns. This could be showcasing, celebrating, and putting families at the forefront of your marketing efforts, whether it be content that you're creating, stories that you're telling, but even offering a family-friendly environment for businesses or for customers to experience your business. And if there are things that you do to accommodate families, children, infants, toddlers, highlight that. That can show up in many ways, like restaurants having kid menus or booster seats, or if you're in the medical services space, how do you make sure that the children visiting your business aren't going to be uncomfortable and maybe feel welcomed in your space? These are all ways that you can start to consider how these values can impact your marketing efforts and can influence the decisions that you make to better target these community members based on that one strongest value. Additionally, playing by the rules is one of their strongest values, and this doesn't mean that they're law-abiding citizens alone, but this means that they really look to authority for rules to help influence how to live their lives in the best way possible. So if you find yourself being an authority figure in your specific business practice, use that as a way to communicate your expertise and marketing efforts, whether that be social media content that's DIY or best practices. This can show up in many different ways, especially for people in the fitness or personal care space, like how to care for your nails after you recently visited a salon, or best ways to maintain your hair if it's a specific hairstyle that they've just paid for. The idea here is to leverage your expertise to help create content that can once again help people know what rules are really present for specific business practices or businesses that they can maybe follow on a day-to-day basis. They pretty much want to know best practices, and if you know how to share that, that's going to benefit your marketing efforts. Some non-conservative social values for this community really relies on the belief that advertising can be enjoyed for its aesthetic properties and not just marketing. What this means is that people will enjoy a commercial, an advertisement, not because they have to, but because they do see value in commercials. They're the type of people who will maybe take a little longer when they're looking at an advertisement that they see on Google or YouTube, sorry, and won't click skip. Or when scrolling through Instagram, they may take a few minutes to actually read through what's being presented to them. So what this means is don't hesitate to spend a little more time in curating content that's aesthetically pleasing. And if you don't have the resources to create these detailed videos, maybe spend more time on putting together a story behind the content that you're sharing, let's say on Instagram or Facebook, and spend time to actually tell a story that actually speaks to that interest as well that they may have, as in, once again, family or playing by the rules. Additionally, they also have a strong desire to promote the brands, products, or services that they are proud of to peers. So these are the people who are going to be shouting from the rooftops about your business or service. So one thing to consider is how can you create referral programs or incentives to motivate customers like this to share their positive experiences. This could range from getting them to, at a starting point, to review you on Google Business, or that it could maybe be an opportunity to start a referral program. The options are endless, but the idea here is now that we know how these people feel and like to be communicated to, the opportunity presents itself to use that way of thinking as a way to influence your marketing efforts on a day-to-day basis. And what I say here doesn't mean that you have to entirely change your marketing strategy. But what it allows you to do here is to influence your content calendar over the next year on maybe speaking to some of these items, like their social values, and how you can take these opportunities as a way to maybe add them into your content calendar as well. Some other examples of ways you can create some opportunities based on the stronger social values for people living north of St. Clair is looking at the fact that they care about their community a lot. So the opportunity here is to create community engagement opportunities within your business, to actively participate in community events or support local causes or sponsor activities that align with the values of the community. Pretty much you want to be able to show your commitment and well-being to the community, whether it's through activities that you're doing like a holiday drive or a food drive, or being physically present or sponsoring events that are being led or run by the community that's focused on social impact or, just overall community activities. Additionally, to speak more to that storytelling piece that I've mentioned earlier, around how you can maybe take advantage of the fact that people are willing to enjoy advertising for its aesthetic value. I mentioned earlier that it's important to invest in some high quality, visually appealing design and creative content that can be enjoyed for its beauty and artistic value. But once again, it's more important at the baseline to use storytelling to connect your brand or product to the personal anecdotes or narratives that resonate with these values. Once again, that could be talking about family values, that could be talking about or creating family friendly spaces, or family as an important motivating factor for the community that's likely living north of St. Clair. For those who live south of St. Clair, the strongest values in this community really reflect self-determination, where individuals believe that they're the ones who have control over their life and their future. So not so conservative, but more focused on their own well-being and their own ability to change their lives by their own actions. So one of the strongest values is a commitment to diet and exercise to feel better and stay healthy. One way you could do this is through developed marketing campaigns that promote a healthy lifestyle, diet, and exercise. This could speak to all sorts of businesses, whether it be retail businesses that provide apparel that are more effective for athletic activities, or it could even focus on places that provide product or services as a tool for individuals to improve their well-being and take charge of their health. So this could be, once again, restaurants speaking more to the ingredients in their products and how it can benefit an individual's well-being. That will speak to individuals' interest in taking care of themselves and focusing on their well-being and their diet and exercise. But at the baseline, if you have products or services that you provide that can contribute to the higher well-being of an individual's health, then highlight that. Use that as a way to talk about that product in detail, whether it be a pair of pants being more suitable for, let's say, hiking. Why? How does it help? Is it more durable? How does it help for that physical activity specifically? These storytelling elements help really narrow down what ways you can make your product or service speak to that strong care that an individual has about their own well-being. Additionally, one of the strongest sets of social values that I've seen come up for South of St. Clair residents is this care for the environment. This shows up twice in the top 5 strongest social values, and once in the weakest social value that they have. Whereas the top social value is that they really care for the environment, and that their strongest social value, the weakest social value that they have is that they don't believe that they have no way of actually impacting positively the future of our ecological environment. So long story short, how can you speak to your business's environmental care or care for environmental practices and sustainable activities? So what this really means is that, if there's ways for you to highlight your company's commitment to eco-friendly practices or provide sustainable products, talk about that. Put that at the forefront of your social media content or storytelling, or even in your storefront. How can you feature stories or ways of displaying what you're doing to contribute to a positive impact on the environment? This could be, hey, we're no longer providing, we don't provide bags anymore. Please bring your own bags is the one contentious example that we've often seen. But there's other ways that you could do minor changes to your business to speak to this need. For example, the first one being allow for paperless billing. If you already have an e-commerce system set up or have a new one of the newer points of sale service technologies, it'll allow you to give customers the option to have a receipt sent to them. Those small level ways of actually making those accommodations to maybe reduce waste speaks to that larger need and care that individuals living south of St. Clair have for the environment. Additionally, it's important to note that if there are things that you're currently doing that is eco-friendly, that is sustainable, that speaks to whether your team or your personal need to care for the environment through your business, highlight that. Highlight that in your store, highlight that in your social media activities, because this is something that is truly one of the strongest values held within the community living south of the BIA. And then the last set of social values I wanted to quickly talk about is really relevant to a belief that small businesses are generally fair and ethical when providing quality goods and services. What I like about this social value is that there's a higher level of trust for those who live south of St. Clair to shop at small businesses and expect a high quality of goods and services, expect a high quality of service, customer service specifically. And these are the people that are likely going to shop at a smaller independent retailer for, let's say, a pair of shoes, rather than go to a Foot Locker or wherever it may be to buy that same pair of shoe, because they want to support local and they believe that supporting local is better than going to the big box store, as opposed to, the benefits that could provide. Like if you go to any Foot Locker, there's a consistency of service, a consistency of a policy. That's like return policies. People will put those ideas and thoughts to the wayside and really still push forward in supporting small business in general. And lastly, when we look at how user-generated content can influence social media efforts and efforts to target those living south of St. Clair as a whole, one way to really consider it, just like north of St. Clair, is take advantage of user-generated content. If people are leaving stories online, social media, Facebook, Instagram stories, Instagram feed, and they tag you in it, highlight that in some way or some form, or at the very least archive it for future reference, because it's important to share the stories of success, the value that people have gained from, engaging in your business, whether it be engaging in a product, buying a product, consuming that product, or experiencing a service. If this story is shared at general, it's a piece of feedback, but at the highest level, it's marketing. So find ways to encourage people to tag you, also to leave stories or on Instagram, but at the very least, ask them to make sure that they leave Google review so that they can, if they've had a positive experience in your business, at least that they'll be helpful in sharing that story widely with others. And just like those living north of St. Clair, one thing that they have in common with those who live south of St. Clair is that they care about community. They care about community projects, they care about local causes, and they care about the community's environment as well. And if there's ways that your business is currently contributing positively to the community or the environment in general that you're already doing, whether it be supporting local causes, fundraisers, sponsoring events, maybe having a food drive, toy drive, or just bringing community together in general, talk about that, share that, make sure that you consistently highlight that. Because the good thing about this is that people living both north and south of the trade area, that is Corso Italia's BIA, care when you care. So it's important to tell that story.